Now, who's interested in buck bedding right now? We're towards the end of the season, and it's time for scouting, it's time for finding buck bedding areas, but it's also time for creating buck bedding areas on private land. So whether you're hunting public land or private land, right now is an excellent time going forward to figure out where bucks are bedding during the fall and how you can create better bedding areas on private land and how you can find great buck bedding areas on public land. And I'm not talking specific buck beds. On public land, you're finding clear cuts and remote areas, and it could seem very confusing. I do not want you to go out and find beds on public land, Shawnee Forest, 63,000 acres, the Wayne down there, 100,000 acres or whatever it is, or up in some UP swamp. You can waste an incredible amount of time, years of time looking for specific beds. It's not about that. And I'm going to talk about 5 easy ways that you can find buck bedding on any land that you hunt, wherever it's at. If there's buck bedding, you're going to find it. And this is what I do for a living. I talk about, I manage food plots, I create food plot plans, design food plots, design habitat plans for a living. But what I'm doing is actually scouting with my client 90 times a year. I will hit 1,000 client parcels that I've been to in 26 states this year, later in 2020. We're ending 2019 right now. Just had a 7 client trip in 8 days that's ending right now. I have another 8 clients in Ohio in January, and I'm booked out. We have fly-in trips that I go to, so I'll hit about 90 clients again this year. And when I'm with my client, I'm looking for bedding areas. I'm looking for where they could put food plots, and I'm looking at that systematic 5-step easy process where if there's buck beds on that property, we're going to find them. And that's what I do for my living. That's what I do. Either when I'm talking about it, I'm out in the field, I'm hunting, scouting for myself, scouting for other people. I scout whitetail properties for a living. First easy step. You're finding good diversity. Now, that diversity could be a clear cut on public land, next to mature timber, next to a swamp. On private land, it might be a big food plot, next to hardwood regeneration, bedding, conifer stands, switchgrass, diversity. You're looking for diversity with a food base. That's the first step. You can find that on a topo map, on an aerial photo using Onyx. You can look at that on a property, on a public land chunk, and say looks like diversity. You can see when the tops go from big to small, from a light green to dark green. When you find clear cut areas in there, I'll give you an example on most public land areas. If they're fresh clear cut, you're going to find white roads. They look as white on an aerial photo. The older those roads get, the darker they become until they blend into the woods and they're non-existent. But where you find those white, very stark contrast roads going out into a clear cut, you know it's young. They appear wider at that time too. But again, you're looking for diversity. Second step, after that diversity, after you locate that food base, doesn't matter if it's on private or public land, you're looking for doe bedding. Is always next to diversity, next to food. That's that first layer of deer bedding. You locate that diversity, that next layer, you're looking for doe bedding. What do you find when you find doe bedding? Don't go by if the poops, the pellets are stuck together or not. That's an old myth. It's kind of like saying, I don't want to get too gross, but with people, if you're eating Mexican, if you're eating corn, if you're eating meat, if you're eating roughage, if you're eating bran, there's going to be a difference in consistency. And it's the same with deer. If they're eating alfalfa all summer long, opposed to acorns in the fall, there's going to be a difference in consistency in their pellets. So what I'm looking for in doe bedding is I'm looking for small beds, big beds, that's obvious. But I'm looking for pellet size. If you have small pellets, big pellets together, does and fawns. No different than big tracks, small tracks, big beds, small beds. Pretty easy to find. I've gone into an area where it's an obvious bedding area like this, next to a diversity area, next to a food source, and there's clumped together pellets, and someone's like, look at that buck, it must be a buck bedding area. And they're so focused on that fad that's another Michigan fad. I should do a video on just Michigan fads, but that's one of them. But you're finding that doe bedding. It's going to be typically, if it's solid food that's unpressured, it's going to be within 50 to 100 yards, 150 yards at most of that food source. And you can see behind me, we have the hills behind me. We have some food plots. We have some brush around those food plots, and then we have doe bedding. And it's only 50 to 75, 100 yards away at most on those interior benches, leading back up top behind me. Diversity, doe bedding. Once you locate that, go the opposite direction from the clear cut, from the food plot that you find the doe bedding in. Go the opposite direction, 100 to 200 yards, back in remote cover, away from field edges, away from hunter access, and you'll find buck bedding opportunity. There's often a stark contrast in the difference. Typically, doe bedding does not blend into buck bedding. Bucks like staying separate, and the older that they become, I find that mature bucks will bed more and more remote, often further away from that food plot. You go up in the UP of Michigan, northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, upstate New York, big woods of Pennsylvania, Kentucky, you'll find that bucks, because deer have space in those areas and they have space to move around, you might even find those bucks are 3/4 of a mile to mile back. I've shot mature bucks in the UP of Michigan 3/4 of a mile back from their feeding and doe bedding. You're going a long ways back in the woods. In mixed ag land, typical hunting area, you're finding those buck beds within 200 yards of the doe bedding, 100 yards. That's where you start to locate and find that buck bedding. So diversity, doe bedding, you're going 100, 200 yards back. And then you're looking for those clusters of rubs. Now those clusters of rubs aren't, if someone's baiting in the UP of Michigan and they're, a bait, you're gonna find a bunch of rubs. So I'm not talking about that. If it's a hidden bunch of apple trees, you're gonna find a bunch of rubs because those are food source rubs. That's a little bit different. When you find buck bed rubs, you're finding clusters of rubs in a specific area. And that'll tell you that, that'll confirm if you're looking on the aerial photos on public land that you found the diversity, you found the doe beds, and then you found clusters of rubs in a remote area 100 to 300 yards back, and all of a sudden there's buck beds. You're gonna find those clusters of rubs in that area. Now those clusters of rubs in that area might cover a 10-acre area, they might cover a 5-acre area, and they might cover a half-acre, quarter-acre. And you'll find those rubs in that location. A lot of times you'll find rubs leading in and out of there. And a lot of times those rubs are hit one time a year. I mean, literally a buck could chew through a 5-inch diameter tree if you wanted to. And a lot of times they're hitting it once or twice, or shavings on the leaves, or shavings under the leaves because they hit it twice. And that's it. Scrapes, completely different story. I talk about that all the time. Perennial scrapes, they hit off and off, and a lot of times what those scrapes are even hitting them all year, at least leaving their preorbital gland scent on. But once you find that clusters of rubs, and that's that fourth area where, again, diversity, does, going back 100 yards, 200 yards, sometimes 300 yards, more if it's in a big wooded area or wilderness area. Then you find those clusters of rubs, and then you're looking for those flat, hidden areas within those clusters of rubs that feature some type of browse. And I'm not talking acorns, because acorns are only available for a specific time of year, and if they're a good stand of acorns, it's a food source rubbing area. So I'm talking about hardwood regeneration, woody shrub tips, swamp edges, breaks in elevation where they're exposed to the sun and you get a much higher level of browse and young growth, stems per acre. So you're looking for those areas within those clusters of rubs, and you're looking for those flats within there, those little mounds, those small benches where there's a little bit of elevation change. They're not going to bed in a ditch area. They're bedding with good vantage point, and that's where you find those buck bedding areas. A lot of times you could do this from an aerial photo, folks. This isn't something you need to search days and days and days and days for. You look, make sense of it. Clear cut on public land. This is interior. Right next to it, you find doe bedding. You go back 200 yards, 300 yards, you start to find clusters of rubs on a hidden bench or ridge somewhere, on a hidden flat or on a swamp edge, on an island in a swamp, and lo and behold, you're starting to find clusters of rubs. You're finding big pellets, you're finding single tracks in those areas, not a combination of big and small tracks, and that's where you find those bucks. And the cool thing that I'm talking about right now is as we're shooting this, right now my cell camera's gone off 10 times, and there's a 4-year-old big buck, split brow, that we've watched. We've seen a couple times this year, kind of elusive, but he's getting his picture taken up on the ridge all the way up on top. So if you think about it, we have the diversity down here. We have the doe bedding part way up. You go back 200 to 300 yards, you're getting up in that upper bull area that's very remote, and we have bedding areas on either side, and that's the buck bedding. That's where I've killed the majority of my bucks on this property. I've killed 10 bucks in 6 years on this property. Most of them have been right up there. He's up there right now getting his picture taken. I don't think he can hear us, or I wouldn't be talking. He's about, I would guess, 400 yards, 450 yards across the sky, right up top behind me. So pretty cool, him coming into that scrape with our Exodus render cameras. I love those cameras. I set them out in September. I have the solar panels with them, so they've been running ever since with 8 lithium batteries, and we're getting pictures in 5-shot bursts every 30 seconds. So when I look at my phone, then I wouldn't be surprised to see more pictures of him up there, because he came right into the mock scrape, between bedding areas, on a bench. There's good hardwood browse and regeneration in those bedding areas, and up in that location. We've detailed some of those spots before that are up there, and he's right in the wheelhouse of where he should be at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I hope you enjoyed those 5 steps. Again, finding that diversity, finding doe beddings bedding areas with small tracks, big pellets, big beds, little beds. Pretty easy to find doe bedding. Going back 100 to 300 yards, depending where you're at, even further in big, open, remote wilderness settings and hardwoods. And then you're looking for those clusters of rubs in and out, defining that this is his area. A lot of times it's almost like a bedding staging area where he's exiting his bed, making a bunch of rubs on the way to food. A lot of times those rubs are on the food side, facing side. And then you're looking for those flats in that area in location. And if I'm hunting big public land, I don't really care about the specific bed. I just want to know there's a buck in that area, in that particular area, because then I'm finding another area, almost like a barbell or a bent barbell between clear cuts, buck bedding, and I'm hunting those funnels of big, large rutting movement on big, long public land areas, or areas where deer are getting pushed into by other hunters during gun season. And I'm finding that X of movement, I'm finding that harder regeneration well away from and behind those doe bedding. And it's a really logical progression. If you just follow those 5 steps, you'll be into buck bedding. You don't need to worry about specific buck beds the majority of the time for the majority of the hunters. And that's how you can find that systematic approach where you're hunting closer to the food in the evening. You're hunting the morning bedding area. I shoot the majority of my bucks back in those morning bedding areas or between them. And that's how I find them. That's how you can find them when I'm scouting private land. It's pretty easy to find them before we even go out on the property. Pretty easy to find them on public land before you go out on the property. Use Onyx maps, whatever you use. I use US Topo too to find those elevation changes. And if you're scouting or creating it this off season, look for those 5 steps that take place. A lot of people want to jump the gun and go look for buck beds when they haven't even found the diversity of the doe beddings and that distance and that layering effect behind, and you're really putting the cart before the horse, and it's very ineffective and wasting a lot of time. I'm looking for you to maximizing your time afield this off season and going into next hunting season. And when it comes to finding or creating buck beds, if you follow these 5 steps, it'll break it down into a very easy, logical process. But it's not just that, it actually works. And I've been using it for decades, and you can too.